Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at DreadOut Keepers of the Dark for the PC. The game was released in 2016 and is developed and published by Digital Happiness. The game is connected to the first DreadOut and takes place in the same universe, but for some reason classes itself as a missing chapter, but then never really explains where it's actually meant to go. But as I'm sure you are wondering, is this survival horror game actually any good or not? Here's more details on what DreadOut Keepers of the Dark is all about. Right from the very start of this review, I'm going to be honest. Keepers of the Dark has a very confusing plot that makes little to no sense and never really explains where exactly the events of this game are meant to go with the first DreadOut game. The game's story is rather complicated at best, and truth be told, you're honestly going to need to play the first DreadOut game to even understand what on earth is going on with this one. Because if you just jump straight in with this one, then you're not going to have a clue about any of the characters or the events within this game's plot. If you have already played the first DreadOut game, then you will be able to understand some of what's going on with this one. I say that because even if you have played the first one, this one's story is rather confusing to figure out. The short version is that Linda has been dragged into an unknown realm by her mirror image, and once trapped in there, she has to go through various doorways where she'll face off against various ghosts and monsters in the hope of finding some way of escape. The story itself isn't bad, but really it is expecting you to have played the first DreadOut game to understand anything that's going on in this one. And that makes sense, because originally this was meant to be a DLC, which for some reason was then changed and separated into a separate release altogether. Character-wise with this game, you just play as Linda, who is the female protagonist from the first DreadOut. So as I stated with the story section, if you have played the first game, then you are going to have some idea of what's going on character-wise and be up to speed with the game's events. However, if you do just jump straight into this game and ignore the first, then prepare not to have a clue about any of the characters or the events happening around you. This game's characters also feel rather limited at best, as you have the main character herself, but the game does expect you to have played the first one to begin with in order to have any clue about her. Other characters don't really feel like they have much to them as well either, the worst being the Serpent Mistress, who you're just never really told that much about, which is rather puzzling considering she is meant to be the game's main villain. The gameplay for DreadOut is something which I've rarely experienced, as it does something different which I really liked, because it makes the characters come across as feeling real, and for a survival horror game, actually feel genuinely scary. To me, this game's gameplay reminds me a lot of the Silent Hill games, where your character is a real person, and they're believable, because they're clumsy, they're not fighters, and they don't come across as like action hero types, and in reality, they're quite weak and get scared. The main character is Linda, and she is trapped in this realm filled with ghosts and monsters, and all she has for protection is her mobile phone and a digital camera, which are her only means of defence, because when she takes a photo and uses the flash feature, she can use it to then vanquish the horrors that are out to kill her. Appearance wise, the game is very well done and was created using the Unity engine. The graphics are gritty and have this old style look and vibe to them that the Silent Hill 2 games had, when you'd be looking over your shoulder every few seconds for fear of what might or might not be behind you. This game does a brilliant job of tricking you with its mixture of lighting and sound effects, and really puts you in a very uncomfortable state where you're not sure if something is actually there, or if it's merely just sound placed in that particular place to screw with you and put you in a state of panic. Appearance wise, I can't really fault the game's graphics, aside from say that they possibly look PlayStation 2-ish. However, I don't really feel like that in upon itself is a bad thing, as you have to remember that this game was made by a small team, but also at a time when things were very different on Steam. Originally, the original DreadOut game was released via the Greenlight system, whereas today, so long as you give Steam money, anything gets published. Exploration wise, you're given a small starting point to begin with, where you're trapped in a room which has various doors leading to other realms. You'll then travel to these different realms, collect items, defeat ghosts and monsters, and use that in order to progress to the next level. The environments created for each realm are all different and range from sewers, caves, wooded areas, cemeteries and more. However, the downside to a lot of the game's environments is that there's a huge amount of recycling going on here from the previous base game. So some levels are practically straight up lifted from the first game, but altered slightly for this one. The areas created are nicely done, but considering that a lot of them just are lifted from the base game, it really is telling that this itself was just meant to be added on as a DLC and not released as a separate game that it's ended up being sold as. Well, if you have made this far into the review and are wondering if this game is worth a purchase or not, I would say yes. However, I would advise that you don't really touch this game without getting the first DreadOut game first. DreadOut Keepers of the Dark is far from perfect because it never really explains where it connects with the first game, or why the events of this game are even happening to Linda, or the reason behind the Serpent's Mistress's actions. It just never really fully explains any of these events to you, and they just come across as rather random. I still did enjoy this game for what it was, and found it to be extremely scary. However, I couldn't help but have this weird feeling as if something extremely important about this game is missing from it. If you are buying the first game and this together, then I would say that you can't really do no wrong. However, buying this game on its own, when it's really meant to be a DLC, is a completely different matter altogether. Keepers of the Dark is a good game, but it's a good game with rather a lot of flaws that could so easily have been sorted out if given a little more time in its production. So if you are looking at this game and are curious about it, then I would recommend that you do get it, but get it in a bundle deal with this and the first game, and you can't really do no wrong. Well, that's it for this review guys. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and please subscribe.